Hello everyone, this is part 18 of What If Naruto Got His Wish, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Futon, Kamasori Cabe no Jutsu. Wind style, razor wall technique. Powerful gusts blew around Naruto in a loose circular pattern, as the winds of a tropical storm might blow around its eye. Branches swayed and bent in the tumultuous gale, and some lesser plants were uprooted. The forest floor within a 10-meter radius of his feet had been ground down by repeated high-intensity blasts of air until it was little more than dust and sand. Not focused enough, Naruto judged. With loose control like that, it's not gonna see anything. Okay, again. His face screwed itself up in concentration as he slowly made the signs again. Cold sweat ran slowly down his tired body, and his chakra was beginning to run out, but Naruto would not rest tonight until he had mastered this jutsu. He needed to master as many as he could before the day of reckoning came. I am strong, he thought. I beat Sasuke. But I need to be even stronger, because the bastard snake, Orochimaru, will be at least 3 times as strong as that. Only the kind of power that can beat a Sannin will save Keisuke and stop the wars. Futon, Kamasori Cabe no Jutsu. It seemed to work better this time. A few of the leaves that fell from the canopy above him were bisected, and large gashes appeared in some of the surrounding tree trunks. Too spread out, Naruto said, breathing heavier now. Has to be more collected and more centered, or it'll be too easy to get past, and I might hurt my friends. Again. His muscles seemed about to give out. His whole body felt heavy. The jutsu wasn't perfect yet. His hands kept forming the seals. No shortcuts, he thought. This is how I get stronger. Try, fail, learn, repeat until success. Hinata's right, whining and moping won't help anyone. Futon, Kamasori Cabe no Jutsu. The tree trunks were spared more gashes this time, but the falling leaves were nearly shredded. Naruto formed a small grin. Quote, Naruto took a moment to catch his breath and drink water from a flask he had brought. His chakra was almost gone and he needed the nourishment to keep going. Hopefully, if he could get up enough power on this try, it would be perfect and he could call it good. Then his train of thought rounded a curve, taking him in another direction. Hinata worries too much. I understand why, knowing how she feels, but. He gave a heavy sigh. This entire thing with Hinata was still so new to him, and he ached in his head and his chest when he thought about it too hard. The problem was, he often couldn't stop thinking about it once he got started. Sitting down in his pile of dust and shredded leaves and taking a long pull on his canteen, his memory of that first day after the invasion came back to him. Having been seeing much of Hinata since returning to the village, the blonde had begun to like her with slowly increasing intensity, and, after a generous amount of evidence, to suspect her of liking him. He had tried to ask her about it, and been repeatedly interrupted. He chuckled to himself, remembering how frustrated he had been in his mind that day. He was still bewildered at how it had been Hinata's father, the ever-haughty Hyuga Hiashi, who had answered his question. The words tingled in his mind. She has long admired you, and over the years this admiration has become a powerful infatuation, and recently love. Are you all right? Naruto had fallen out of the bed then, and it took a considerable amount of willpower not to knock his head against the nearby tree at the present. He should not have been surprised that day, considering all of the evidence that had been dumped at his feet through the years, and yet he was surprised anyway. It had ended abruptly when Akamaru had broken down the door to the room, resulting in a rapid retreat by the Hyuga girl before the inevitable appearance of Kiba. She had gone out of the room extremely red-faced, leaving behind a slightly stunned Naruto and a Kiba who had a knowing smirk on his lips. It had been brief, but it had told Naruto everything he had needed to know. The question was, what was Naruto meant to do about it? He knew he liked Hinata a lot, and had been liking her increasingly since his return to Konoha. Not only was she a really nice person, she was intelligent and had grown much stronger since their parting 3 years before. She also shared his way of the ninja, never going back on her word no matter the consequences to herself. That, Naruto thought, was a very admirable trait. Putting all this aside, Hinata had also become exceedingly beautiful, and on several occasions his body had acknowledged this fact while his brain had taken a temporary coffee break. Commitment, he thought. Secrets. Trust. Understanding. If I were to commit myself to Hinata, there's no way I would let her down. That's my Nindo. But am I ready to make a commitment like that? Right now, I have other things to think about, saving Keisuke, stopping this huge war, Kei Orochimaru. As for secrets, he mused, scratching his head, there aren't many secrets left in me, but I don't know much about her other than she's pretty, is a good person, and doesn't give up. If it's going to work, I'd have to start learning more about her. Trust is already there. I trust Hinata with my life and probably my ramen, and I'm sure she would trust her own with me. And understanding. Keisuke said we should know where we're both going in life and figure out how each other fits into that plan. I don't think either of us have really thought about that yet. Bottom line, there's a lot to do before I can really say I'm in love. So what am I supposed to do in the meantime? He needed to be focusing on his training. This mission required that he put aside personal problems and do what was needed to ensure success. Or, what the hell, he thought, standing up, maybe I can try to work on it a bit, but will it really be okay to mess around while I've got all this other stuff on my plate? Gah, it's so confusing. Futen, Kamasori Cabe no Jutsu. The force of the wind was so great that the ground beneath him, having already been severely worn down, was ground into a fine sand. After it was over, the sand sank back in to fill the hole that had been created, burying Naruto to his shoulders. The bits and pieces of falling leaves fluttered around his head like confetti. Perfect, he said. Then his eyes closed. Devoid of all chakra and energy, Naruto fell asleep. He was in that place again. There were the huge bars of the monster's cage, standing as solid as ever, though the water flowing at their bases made every effort to rust them. There also was the great lock, over which was affixed the paper tag bearing the word, seal. The place was as dark and dim as always, and as he stood before the cage, he could not shake off the imposing impression of inferiority that accompanied the monster's aura. Evil eyes gazed down upon Naruto as they had many times in the past. He had felt the gaze of those who hated him often enough in the past, but this hate had been inspired out of fear. While it saddened him, it did not give him pause. This hate-filled glare belonged to one who did not fear him at all, for it was much larger and was built for destruction. Destruction that Naruto prevented him from wreaking every day he was alive. Welcome back to hell, my host, said the Kyuubi, spitting the final word with acid contempt. I was beginning to think that perhaps you had managed to escape the need for sleep, as the Shukaku's medium did. I am pleased to see that I was wrong, now the fun may begin again. The blonde floated, helpless, within his own mind. Struggle as he might, and struggle he did, willing his muscles with every fiber of his being to carry him away from this place. Sleep bound him, and while it lasted, he could not lift a finger. He wanted so badly to shout at the monster fox as it laughed and continued speaking. It is so wonderful to be having your company every night. I think I am rather beginning to like this new seal. Look, I think it may be growing clearer. Kyuubi directed Naruto's vision up towards the ceiling of the prison chamber. Sure enough, the new seal it had mentioned was there, a pale green marking, glowing softly in the darkness. It was distorted and blurred, but it was very large, spanning the length of the entire ceiling, and Naruto could see that through the distortion it resembled a pair of birds' wings, from which dangled chains. The two wings were joined symmetrically at the top of the wall of bars, with one reaching into Kyuubi's cell and the other into Naruto's half of the room. Naruto wanted to groan. The nine-tailed beast guffaw. Yes. Despair, it crowed, for while you are master in the light of day, I will haunt you nightly in your dreams until we are parted. I have been caged alone for these years, but now we are two birds caged together, thanks to this wonderful new seal destabilizing our old bond. Even I, the most powerful destructive force to walk this land, never dreamed of being given this chance to repay you for your hospitality, but while I still have it, I have every intention of using it. Damn you, the dreaming Naruto thought. Shut the hell up. Let us see, wondered the Kyuubi, what shall we do tonight? Shall I show you images of your dear friend's inevitable fates? I have a few wonderful new ideas for Keisuke Ni-chan. Or perhaps I will remind you of your 10,000 pitiful failures, since you seem to have regained your confidence, or should we call it ignorance? A few silent moments passed in which Naruto prayed for someone to wake him up and Kyuubi watched him with evil satisfaction in his eyes. The beast loved watching the boy squirm. Ah, I have it. Let us experiment with your failures a little further. I'm sure we can make them lead into scenes of most grotesque death and destruction. As Kyuubi's laughter drowned out all thought and the nightmare began, Naruto steeled himself. The fight for his sanity, he knew, would be as long as and even more tiresome than that of the previous night. Quote. I really need to get a better grip on myself, Hinata thought aloud as she wandered the black forest. Her long, dark hair swayed in the cool night breeze, and her eyes were reflections of the autumn moonlight. A wistful look dominated her delicate features, making her seem as a pale apparition in the night. Having escaped the malicious mischief of Haruka and Kiba, she was experiencing mixed feelings of relief and, something she hadn't felt in a long time, shame. Hinata was as she had always been when Naruto was the main subject, reclusive, and panicky when confronted. Even having confessed, she still felt the need to run away when pressured by outsiders. I shouldn't be running away from it, she continued. I should be proud of what I've done. By telling him, and then avoiding the subject, even with someone other than him. That is breaking my nindo, his nindo. I never go back on my word. That's my nindo. Naruto-kun, she breathed, it is a wonderful way to live, I know that as well as you do, now. But you probably weren't thinking about the complexity of the human heart when you said that. She continued to walk aimlessly through the forest for an hour and more. At this moment, she cared nothing for the dangers of wandering a potential war zone alone, her mind demanded that it be given time to settle, and it would not relent. All the while, her thoughts continued in a vicious cycle, going from shame to fear and back again with no sign of stopping. The arguments differed slightly in each cycle, but always came back to the same points. Around and around it went, back and forth until she felt herself becoming sick. Eventually, she woke from this mental darkness to find herself completely lost in the physical darkness of the forest. Realizing this, she heaved a sigh. More proof that I really need to get a hold of myself. Byakugan. Her eyes snapped back to normal when they located the unconscious blonde boy less than 2 kilometers away. Putting all thoughts of shame and fear behind her, she began running. There was no sign of any hostility in that direction, but with Naruto, one never knew what kind of trouble might be about. She reached the pit of sand and dust in the space of 20 heartbeats. Naruto-kun, she called cautiously. When she received no reply, she approached him, taking great care to be sure that no hidden dangers were present in the pit. Checking the area one more time with Byakugan and finding nothing, she grabbed Naruto under the arms and pulled hard, hauling him out with some difficulty. When at last he lay on his back before her, fully liberated from his self-created sand hole, she looked him over meticulously. Physically, there was nothing wrong with him other than the expected exhaustion. Not all was normal with him internally, however. Looking over his chakra circulatory system, Hinata noted that although his normal chakra was almost gone, there was a moderate level of activity in the red chakra emanating from the demon's seal on his abdomen. It ran a steady circuit between that seal and the pale green one upon his forehead. And one thing especially worried her, while all this was going on, Naruto's face or body would give an occasional sporadic twitch or jerk, as though a knife blade had been thrust into him. Oh, Naruto-kun, she said softly, I've been worrying about my own trivial problems while you were here, suffering alone in the dark. I'm so sorry. She knelt beside the blonde that she loved and cradled his head in her lap. Though he did not wake and his face continued to twitch off and on, the spasming of his body ceased. Hinata exhaled heavily, happy to see some improvement. She had had no idea that he had been having nightmares like this. And that strange chakra activity. I'll ask Sakura-chan about it tomorrow, she thought. Her small, delicate hand found itself running through Naruto's messy golden hair. This is nice, she said to herself, being alone like this with him. I haven't done it since we defeated Uchiha. It is sad, though, to only do it when he is in pain. I wonder, would he object to doing it when we are both healthy and comfortable? Her hopes were not high. Naruto seemed unlikely to respond to her anytime soon, and she doubted she would get up the nerve to ask while he was still unsure of his own feelings. It certainly was pleasant to dream of, however. After a few moments, Hinata gently removed Naruto's head from her lap and stood up. Using the Byakugan again, she searched until she found the campsite, a faraway speck of light in the darkness. Not feeling secure about lugging a heavy carcass, as Haruka had put it, but not wanting to leave Naruto alone in the forest in his condition, she hoisted him up unsteadily and began the running, leaping trek back to their comrades. The blackness engulfed him. There was no light, no visibility at all. His world was comprised of 4 sensations: touch, smell, taste, sound. No borrowed eyes. No ghostly arms. Not even the normal ability to sense the subtle vibrations of the auras of people around him. His dream self did not have the ghostly arms, and had not learned to sense auras at this age. No, he begged with a voice that wasn't heard and would never be heard. Don't show me this. It was too long ago, too long. The dream neither heard nor heeded him. It could only continue forward in its pre-programmed path, drawing on memories that he had buried long before. He was trapped in his past, and he could do nothing at all to escape it. He was forced to listen, feel, smell, and taste his childhood as though living it again, but he could do nothing to alter it. His body acted exactly as it had originally, regardless of his will. Keisuke-chan. He heard the gentle voice coaxing him forward. Coming, Ka-chan. He heard himself say. He felt himself step unsteadily forward, feeling out his every movement. The scent of pine drifted into his nostrils. He was outside the house with his mother, practicing how to walk unassisted. The sweetness of the scene was too much. Experiencing it made him want to cry, though his lack of eyes had never allowed him to cry once in his whole life. It pained him beyond measure, because he knew exactly what was to follow. Keisuke felt his small boy's body collide with his mother's warm and caring embrace. He heard the congratulatory praise she gave him, and would have become physically sick if he had had possession of the body that moved and spoke for him. Okay, Keisuke-chan, his mother said, we're going to do it again. I'll wander a little farther this time. Are you ready? Hi, Ka-chan. The adult trapped in the child's body reeled and struggled and fought as the woman went through the hide-and-seek routine over and over again with her child, as kind and loving as any mother might be. The dream was complete and unabbreviated, and the full length and detail enhanced his horror. You fool! He cried silently. You blind, accursed fool! The day went on as normally as it ever had in those times. After the practice, the young Keisuke followed his mother into the house, where she fed him lunch. From there, they played children's games on the floor of the living room until Keisuke's father returned from his doings in the village, and then Keisuke stayed in the kitchen, inhaling the wonderful scents as his mother prepared the evening meal. Then they ate the meal while young Keisuke listened to his parents exchange stories about how the day had been for them. The child beamed eyelessly with pride when his mother spoke about his accomplishments. The perfect ending to a perfect day. Finally, Keisuke was put to bed, and the nightmare neared its climax. The child heard the call of nature late in the night and, deciding to utilize his improved navigational ability rather than call for assistance, rose from his bed. He walked the unseen halls of his parents' house, successfully navigating to the toilet and doing his business without disturbing anyone. Proud of himself, he began to make the walk back. The adult Keisuke wished he could cover his ears and avoid hearing the noise that marked the end of the perfect, cheerful era in his life. A muffled yelp of pain escaped the door of his parents' bedroom as he passed it. The young Keisuke stopped walking, concerned. Had his father hurt himself climbing into bed? Quietly, he inched closer to the door, straining to hear better. And no, came the hoarse voice of his father, please stop. Be silent, worm, commanded a deep, husky voice that the young Keisuke did not know and the adult Keisuke knew too well. Though I feed on your suffering and revel in your pitiful pleas, the child must not know, yet. Only when he is older will he be capable of understanding what has truly happened here. Only then will he be able to feed me the suffering that I will be starved for when you are dead. Now, do not struggle. In the morning, you will not even remember. Indeed, the younger Keisuke did not at all understand what this thing in his parents' bedroom was, nor what it was doing to his father. He would go to the village elders the next morning with his curiosity, and their investigation would lead to his mother's flight. From that day on, his entire life would revolve around taking care of his afflicted father. He would not know the real truth of what he had heard here for many years to come. But the Keisuke who was imprisoned inside him understood perfectly. The horror of it mangled his mind and seared his soul. Let me go. He felt blessed air, real air, not the sickening dream air, rush into his lungs as he came out of his slumber. At long last, he was in control again. Greedily, he sucked in as much of the air as his diaphragm could manage, savoring its cool and refreshing taste. Welcome back to the living, spoke a man standing over him. Exercising his new freedom, Keisuke felt for the man's aura, identifying him by the familiar calm and practiced manner as well as his familiar voice. Kabuto, he said. Keisuke's voice was ragged. How long had it gone unused? How long had he been sleeping? He felt the aura above him flush with pleasure. I am pleased to see that you remember me, Keisuke-san, said the evil medic. Orochimaru-sama has asked that I continue with the medical tests today in his stead. He has exhausted his weakening body in traveling, and on top of that he must keep one of our associates constantly entertained. The man has quite a temper, you see. Of course not. You cannot see anything. That's a bad joke, Keisuke rasped. The sadist could come up with something much better. Haruka, he thought. I'm sorry I took away your punching bag. But please, don't let these bastards keep me here. They're going to break my mind and body down 10 times faster than you ever could dream of doing. Compared to them, you're an angel. The sadist, I'm afraid, will shortly be incapable of coming up with anything at all, replied Kabuto, as will all of the allies who are coming for you. You need not worry yourself about being the victim of her cruel jokes anymore. Keisuke grimaced. That's real comforting, he said. Really? Kabuto asked, feigning surprise. It was not meant to be. Well, on that note, I think we shall begin today's activities. To start off, I will need a sample of muscular tissue. The morning brought bountiful golden light down into the traveler's camp. Birdsong rang out in the momentarily peaceful grove as prey animals began their foraging for the day and their predators stretched lazily in the early warmth, taking their time to enjoy the glory of the rising sun before beginning their work. The air was still, calm, and chill, as slow to awaken as the rest of the forest. There was no sudden noise of activity to accompany the flood of light. The occupants of the camp had risen hours ago to begin the work of packing up, and they did their work in the manner of shinobi, quickly, silently, and effectively. The fire had been doused and the fire pit filled in and covered, looking as though it had never been there. Rations of food and water had been stowed in packs along with bedrolls, utensils, and tents. The travelers had only to take down the perimeter traps that they had set up before they were ready to proceed. If one neglected the fact that there was still one young blonde shinobi who had yet to haul himself out of dreamland. Naruto slept in the final tent, wrestling with the last of his dreams. From the outside, he appeared to be having a minor nightmare. If he hadn't been securely tied into his sleeping roll with wire, his thrashing might have kicked out the tent spike that he was sleeping near. He made no vocal sound, however. As the sun rose higher into the sky and more light brightened the tent, his nightmare seemed to ebb. His twitching ceased, his breathing became more regular, and his facial expression calmed. Then, at last, the light grew bright enough to free him from his dreams entirely. Soon after, his eyes fluttered open, allowing his bright blue irises to take in the world, the real world, gladly and with relief. The blonde stared up at the blandly colored tent ceiling with no trace of the morning stupor that plagued many men. As soon as he was awake, he was alert, clinging to wakefulness like a life preserver in the middle of the great sea. He sucked air into his lungs deliberately and with force, the first act performed today on his own will rather than a demon's, and used the added oxygen to flex loose the wire that tied him. Free of these bonds, he slid quickly and happily out of the bedroll, then cheerfully worked the kinks out of his stiff muscles, making no secret of his gladness to be awake. As his mood brightened, the objects in the tent seemed to brighten as well. Whether this was the result of his psyche affecting his outlook or just the continuing brightening of the sunlight did not matter, Naruto's relief remained the same. There was one thing in the tent with him, however, that was not affected by either Naruto's psyche or the sunlight. It sat sourly in the opposite corner of the tent from the blonde, staring simultaneously at everything and at nothing. Its arms were bound tightly behind its back with loop upon loop of the strongest microfiber rope that the country of Fire's top-secret labs had to offer. The skin that it wore was pale and wasted, the result of many days of poor care. Its hair, once as black as the night itself, was now streaked with a number of gray hairs, product of malnutrition and high stress. It had deep, dark eyes with deep, dark rings around them, as though it hadn't slept at all since the journey began. Once, it had been considered human. Now it was only a treacherous monster in the eyes of the world. Once, it had had good friends. These were gone, now, it had cast them away in favor of power and vengeance. The most remarkable thing about Uchiha Sasuke, however, was that he did not seem to care. In fact, one might assume that the former Leaf Genin was completely unaware of his situation or his surroundings, for all the attention he paid them. All throughout Naruto's awakening and dressing, he continued staring into whatever dark nothingness he saw where he should have seen the tent. Then Naruto finished pulling on his black and orange jacket and pants, and attached his equipment. He did not yet have the green vest that identified him as a Chunin. He had been promoted before leaving, but a temporary stamp had been applied to his identification card, and he tucked this safely away in an inner pocket, patting it lightly. Then he made ready to leave. All right, he said, another day's hard work, one step closer to the goal. Geez, it's bright out. How long did I sleep in? He had an ear towards the wall of the tent that had faced the campfire and heard nothing. He shrugged. Well, too late to worry about it now. Just have to wait for Neji to come back. Naruto's words trailed off as he caught sight of his tent mate for the first time that morning. He had been so glad to escape his nightmare that he had completely forgotten the nightmare that was rooming with him. The blonde's cheerful mood dropped down again. Since the Uchiha traitor could not be left alone, Naruto would have to wait until Neji returned before he could go. He was stuck in a tent with his oldest enemy. Even worse, his enemy had stopped staring at nothing and had turned his dangerous gaze on him. The blonde knew that glare. Something was up in that evil head. Almost wishing for a good argument to help pass the unhappy time, Naruto spoke first. What are you staring at, huh? He asked, eyebrows narrowing. Gonna try something, Sasuke? Think I'm weak enough this early in the morning that you can get away? No, replied the dark-haired Uchiha, his voice dripping with acid sarcasm. I'm thinking that you would be an ideal rape victim and that if I could get my hands free you wouldn't be wearing those pants right now. Naruto balked at this response, falling onto his backside and crab walking into the far tent wall at breakneck speed. Wah, wah. Sasuke's glare became even more angry as he said, idiot. You're lucky that you have that fox sealed up inside to think for you, or you wouldn't have lasted a week as a ninja. This snapped Naruto out of his confused shock. It had been bad enough when he had been likened to Kyuubi, but nobody got away with thinking that some monster fox was better than him. His own subconscious had that covered. You shut the hell up, he growled. You're lucky that we need your sorry ass for this mission, or else I'd bash your face in all over again. Sasuke smirked. Or rather, he said, let your pet kitsune bash my face in, right? Naruto fought down his fury. I'm in control, he thought. I will not let him manipulate me into getting angry. We need him, or else we won't catch Orochimaru. We won't save Ni-chan. I was in control when you lost, he said. And I'll be in control when I bring your bastard sensei's hidey hole down around his ears. I'll be laughing at you then, and Keisuke will laugh with me. Sasuke's expression grew serious again, and he leaned back against the tent wall, returning to staring at nothing. Naruto stopped talking, wondering what was going on in his enemy's head now. Sasuke. That's impossible, the dark-haired traitor said. You don't know Orochimaru like I do. You haven't dealt with him long enough to know that to understand him is to realize that you understand nothing at all. Leaning forward once more, looking at the ground before him, Sasuke appeared to be recalling dark facts. No fear showed on his pale face, but Naruto, looking at him, could see traces of jealousy mixed under a mask of respect for the sensei he remembered. What we see Orochimaru doing is a fraction of what he actually does. There's too much going on in his head and in other places that we don't know about. Not even I knew half of what he did while he was training me, and I don't think Kabuto knew much more than me. Naruto listened with grave attentiveness. When Sasuke paused for breath, he interrupted. So, you're saying that the plan he gave you was only half the plan? He asked. What does that mean? Are you telling me that we're playing into his hands, now? Probably. How do I know you're not leading us there yourself? Sasuke looked up to glare at him a moment. When Jiraiya left you at the mercy of your enemies, did you feel like helping him do his dirty work? Naruto hadn't expected this answer, and couldn't think up a quick rebuke. The argument made sense to him. Sasuke's gaze returned to the floor. You should also remember, he continued, that Orochimaru is incredibly good at manipulating people, both physically and mentally. By the time this is over, some of your friends might not be your friends anymore. Naruto's thoughts immediately went to Keisuke, who was the closest of his friends to Orochimaru at that moment. Was Sasuke implying? Naruto, came a commanding voice through the tent walls. Are you awake yet? Neji, Naruto exclaimed, opening the flap to reveal the face of the team leader. Finally, I thought I'd never get away from this jerk. Neji's face went from darkly serious to darkly sour. Clearly, he was not looking forward to his time with the traitor, either. Naruto almost sympathized with him, the group just didn't have room for two dark geniuses, after all. Neji controlled his own disgust, however, and said what he had come to say. Naruto, he said, the last of the traps are being packed up. We will be on the move again soon, so get your pack together. Tell everyone to meet me at the Western Ridge, as we planned last night. The blonde already had most of his things packed up, and with a grab at a few stray items on the floor, he was finished. Grinning a you can count on me grin, he stood up and nodded at his team leader. Okay, Neji, will you take long to meet us? He asked. Neji took a moment to glare at the prisoner, who was regarding them with apparent indifference. His mouth contorted into a deep frown. As soon as I have packed this tent and, he seemed to have to struggle to overcome his dread of the concept, discussed a few things with our guide, I will follow you. It should not take longer than 10 minutes. Naruto felt that it was best to get moving at this point. Not only did he have little desire to know how these two most unsociable of people, especially two who were captive and captor, would manage discuss anything in a plain, simple, and effective manner, but he also felt that Neji was quickly growing edgy and was anxious to get it over with. Therefore, he gave a simple nod and a grunt and pushed open the tent flap, heading out into the glorious sunshine. Neji focused his white gaze on the Uchiha in the dark corner of the tent. Sasuke was staring blankly at the tent flap where Naruto had left. The Hyuga genius pondered this with professional interest. Was the traitor formulating a plan of some kind? He thought for a long moment, but no brilliant ideas came to mind. Sighing mentally, Neji decided that it was time to get on with business as usual. Not sparing any more energy than was necessary talking to the traitor, he said quite simply, out. Sasuke did not immediately respond, but remained seated, his cold eyes gazing off into a reality that Neji could not see. Neji was at a loss as to what this meant. For the first 2 days of the journey, the Uchiha traitor had been just as difficult, but Neji knew that this had been simply to spite his captor. He had not had this vacant look now. Then again, Naruto had been the one to come out of the tent and then send Neji into it on both days, rather than having Neji come in and then Naruto out. Was Sasuke always like this just after the Jinchuriki left? Curious, but no less committed to duty, Neji repeated himself, more loudly this time. Out, Uchiha. Sasuke appeared to hear him, and rose to his feet slowly and quietly, keeping all his appendages where Neji could see them as a good prisoner should. He walked in front of the Hyuga Junin out of the tent. He remained silent and still even as Neji began taking down the final tent, though Neji watched him and his own work simultaneously with the Byakugan. Later in the day, once they got moving, Sasuke would become as spiteful, sarcastic, and intolerable as ever. For now, though, he simply stood off to one side, behaving perfectly well. And Neji could see that, every now and then, he would work his mouth parts feverishly, as though trying to readjust his lower jaw. Are you seriously concerned about that, Naruto-kun? Asked Haruka incredulously. She, Naruto, and Sakura were leaping through the trees, headed towards their rendezvous point with Shino. There was a fine, strong breeze this morning, and the three of them were running into it, causing Sakura's pink hair to constantly get into her eyes and Haruka's dark braid to snake and whip along through the air behind her. Naruto considered. He didn't think his friend's will was weak, of course, but what Sasuke had said had some merit. Orochimaru had malevolent powers and tools of evil beyond those of a normal shinobi, and he also had the will to use them all. If anyone could break a person's mind apart and reassemble it to fit his own ends, it was either Orochimaru or Uchiha Itachi. You never know, Naruto said. 3 years ago, I never would have thought that Sasuke would have stooped so low, but look what happened there. Ducking under a branch as he leaped to the next tree, he left his argument open-ended. Uchiha Sasuke didn't have an enraged woman waiting to kick the crap out of him if he got out of line, Haruka countered. There was no trace of sadism in her, as appeared to be her new norm when talk turned to their mutual blind friend. She was completely serious about the whole matter, and probably the beating Keisuke would get, too. On Haruka's other side, Sakura was oddly silent. She certainly agreed with the older woman's point. Had she broken Sasuke's jaw 3 years ago instead of only a few days ago, events might have been greatly altered. Keisuke, as unfortunate as he thought he was to have been partnered with Haruka, was very lucky to have a forceful teammate. Though the pink-haired Kanoiki had decided not to let her mistakes haunt her, she couldn't help but feel a bit jealous of Haruka's indiscriminate aggressiveness. Besides, Haruka went on, how much can Orochimaru possibly do? Keisuke can stand almost any physical pain, he won't be fooled by hearing illusions, and the fool can't be horrified by what he sees, because he can't see. He may be an idiot more often than not, but there's no hardship he can't handle, and there's no way that he would turn on us. A lot like you, Naruto-kun, you pick your friends very well. Naruto smiled. He certainly did do that well, among other things. Yeah, he said, you're probably right. Just Sasuke team trying to mess with my head again. When this is over, I'm going to break his nose. Let's see him try to do that when I'm too busy laughing my ass off at his nasally voice. That made Haruka crack a smile of her own. It was the kind of solution she herself would have come up with. As a sort of surrogate big sister, she felt proud of the blonde youngster. Sakura, meanwhile, fought negativity within herself, restoring the shinobi professionalism that had kept her going in her darkest hours all throughout her post-academy days. It helped, and soon she was able to force a smile for Naruto's humor, too. Yes, she was a ninja again, calm, collected, focused, and therefore useful to her teammates. No one would ever doubt her loyalty to her friends. Still, it would be nice if she could get a chance to splash some water in her face. She still hadn't quite gotten rid of the morning funk. Naruto, Haruka-san, she asked, can you go and meet Shino without me? There's something I want to take care of really fast. Naruto looked over at her with a puzzled look. There was a residual strained look on his medical teammate's mien. Was something wrong? No, of course not. Sakura had grown out of keeping such problems from her teammates. If something was majorly wrong, she would have said something. Flashing an assuring grin, he nodded. No problem. Just meet us at the ridge when you're ready. Haruka nodded her assent as well. Don't get caught with your pants down. I'm not sure whether she meant that figuratively or literally, Sakura thought as she broke formation. Deciding not to be bothered with it, she made her way off into thicker vegetation, where a stream flowed tranquilly down from the hills. A shadowed figure, crouching high up in the canopy, watched as one of the three broke away from the others and deviated off towards a nearby stream. Its eyes flashed green in the little light that reached it. So, the medic, it said. The voice sounded androgynous, not terribly high or low, masculine or feminine, but somewhere in between. It was also calm and cool, showing a minimal amount of emotion. Should we take her, or choose another? A medical ninja would have extensive knowledge of anatomy and physiology, and might detect me before I can properly ensure success. Seemingly from nowhere, the voice of the Shadowed One's companion came down to offer its own opinion. I don't see how she'd be able to stop you, even if she did pick up on it, it said. This voice was clearly male, and clearly annoyed to have to be kept waiting. Hurry up and do it, already. The sooner we can get this done, the sooner we can go home and I can take you out for real. The emerald eyes flashed again, angrily this time. I have told you, Hikaru, said the Shadowed One, keeping its voice cool but unable to fully eliminate a dangerous acidic undertone, that I have no interest whatsoever in the barbaric courtship that you are inclined to offer me. Our relationship to each other is comrade to comrade, and it will remain so. Oh, I don't think the same way you do, came the Invisible One's reply. I've seen you under that heavy cloak you're always hauling around. You wouldn't make an effort to keep yourself that pretty if you weren't interested. I assure you, you are in error. Speak no more of it now, or I will entrap you here until the mission is finished, and then I will turn you over to Kohei for disciplinary action. We must complete our duty. A sigh could be heard. Yeah, sure. The shadow nodded. Then, I will go. Watch and warn me if the others come back for her. All right, Ayaka-chan, assented the invisible man, leave it to me, and do your thing. The figure shadowed in the high canopy moved, following silently after the pink-haired medic. It said nothing, made no preparations, and it did not act anxious or afraid. Its dark, heavy cloak masked its body, and its head was hooded, masking all its facial features except its glittering emerald green eyes. The cold water hit Sakura's face with a light sting. It certainly was chilled this early in the morning, especially with all that dense foliage shading it. Almost at once, she began to feel better and, rubbing it liberally into her skin and eyes, she used its refreshing nature to purge from her all signs of strain, heaviness, and morning funk. So focused on cleansing herself, she took no notice of the creeping vines that advanced silently behind her. It was not until she rose back to her feet and promptly felt them pulled back out from under her that she was made aware of her peril. Falling flat on her back, Sakura tried to struggle back up, but the vines were swifter than she. They wrapped around her faster than she could get 1 foot flat, and she was bound completely in less than 3 seconds. What? She asked, completely bewildered. No plant that she knew acted like this. Tangular vines, answered a voice behind her. At first, Sakura thought she was hearing Shino, until she realized that this voice was not as deep as his. They are one of many exotic plants that my clan breeds. They live by trapping large prey with their incredible strength and speed, and then slowly leaching nutrient-rich V from the prey until it die. You need not fear them, assured the cool voice. They obey me, and I have commanded them not to feed from you. You will be more suitable for our purposes alive. The shinobi approached her, and Sakura could now see the heavy, dark shroud that hid most of the features. The eyes were brilliant green, even more green than her own, and they regarded her without any expression, no compassion, no pity, no malice, and no satisfaction. Then the figure reached her and turned her over to lie on her front, where she could see nothing. Sakura felt the vines loosen a bit about her midsection, and then her captor's hand slide down her back. What is this ninja doing? She waited a moment, not knowing what to expect. She could feel nothing unusual besides the shinobi's hand. The cloaked ninja watched calmly as the captive girl abruptly stopped struggling. Then she nodded, satisfied, and withdrew her hand. Standing up, she recalled the tangular vines. Still showing no emotion or sign of care, she observed as the body of the pink-haired girl stood up on its feet again, apparently unharmed. Whom do you serve, girl? Asked the ninja. You. Of course, Mistress Ayaka. The body of Sakura looked, acted, and sounded perfectly normal, as if nothing at all were wrong. Good, Ayaka said. I had feared that you might have guessed the puppeteer plant's purpose and fought. The parasite cannot take control if the victim's will is fortified against it. Oh, is that so? Sakura asked, sticking her tongue out in embarrassment. Shows how prepared I was. You sure got me good, mistress. A high-pitched whistle sounded from above. Niece, Ayaka-chan. Perfect-y as always. Ayaka turned her gaze upward, a menacing look apparent on her normally emotionless upper face. Hikaru, she said in a low warning tone, if you continue to make this much noise, no matter how skilled you are at hiding, you will attract attention to us and possibly jeopardize our mission. Kohei, and more importantly, our client, will not be pleased if that happens. Sheesh, grumbled the voice of the young man, I was just offering her praise. You'd think a girl would appreciate a gesture like that. Hikaru leaped into the shadow of the thicket, and his stealth faded. A tall and handsome youth with short, straw-colored hair that lay flat and somewhat wispy atop his head, he held himself with an arrogant, assertive posture. His clothing was all brilliant white, consisting of long pants tucked into his sandals and a simple sleeveless shirt. He had even washed all of the color out of his headband, which he had tied proudly around his muscular right arm. The headband bore the symbol of Kumogakure village. Sorry, Ayaka-chan, he said, you're right. We definitely want to succeed in this mission. We don't want Kohei getting upset. He'll blow the whole forest down if we get him mad enough. Ayaka's emerald eyes narrowed at her teammate. You do not need to feign care for our third teammate's reaction. You have never cared. Both of us know that you are driven by personal reasons. Hikaru laughed. You know me far too well, Ayaka-chan. Of course, the real reason I'm here is for my personal vendetta. I've waited and trained 2 years for this opportunity. Why else would I be motivated? The white-clad shinobi's maliciously grinning gaze turned to Sakura, who stood watching all of this with a curious expression. Her mistress teammate certainly was strange. Hikaru swaggered confidently up to her, and put a hand atop her pink-framed head. You'll bring her to me, won't you? He asked. The Hyuga B. Hikaru didn't quite expect the reaction that he got. The medic employed her incredible strength in defense of her dignity, as she would have on any normal day. The white-clothed Cloud Nin barely managed to avoid sailing into a nearby tree. Finally getting his feet on the ground after flipping over 3 times, he skidded to a dusty halt. I won't do a damn thing for you unless Mistress Ayaka commands it, you pig. And don't call my friends names, or you'll regret it. Hikaru rubbed the imprint on his cheek, mumbling, I think I'm regretting it already. My servant, interrupted Ayaka quietly, causing Sakura to immediately snap to attention. I have a task for you that you must begin immediately. Hi, Mistress Ayaka. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.